Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're coming from. It's Louisa Munson, and I'm joined here once again with the lovely Rick. I was going to call you Rick Munson then. I don't think your wife or my husband would be very happy about that, would they?
Or your husband.
Yeah, my husband would be very happy about that. Nothing like a bit of a faux pas at 7 a.m. in Portugal to start an international inquiry
Exactly.
about our. It's Rick Pursell, and he's a lovely chap who's joining me from. Do you want to share where you are and what time it is?
I'm in the. Actually, no, that's the waterfall that you can hear.
Oh,
yeah. So outside, it's a glorious sunny day. It's 2:06 in the afternoon, and beautiful weather, temperate climate, and perfect for interviewing.
Absolutely. And you're joining us from Bali, aren't you? That magical island.
Yes, indeed.
So as we get going today, our subject is, I've already forgotten what I've called it now, breaking down the walls around our hearts, which was your suggestion, Rick. And I think it's a fantastic suggestion. So do you want to tell me a little bit about why you wanted that as a discussion for us today?
Very good question, because in my coaching practice, I come across people, both men and women, who, because of trauma in the past, in past relationships, they have closed down their heart in an effort to prevent them getting hurt again. That's the simplest reason why. But there's a huge liability in doing that, and that's what I'd like to discuss today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can absolutely attest to that myself. You know, when something's going on, often the walls actually come up, don't they? You know, like there's this barrier, you have to protect your heart. So I've just popped a little message there. Join us with your questions. So if you're joining us wherever you are in the world, say hi. Let us know where you're coming from. But also let us know if you're currently going through a situation, or if you want to share something about when you've broken down the walls of your heart, or how that may have helped you. You're part of this show, so please do join us. Okay, so what would you like to start with in respect of our conversation, Rick? Like, has this been something that you've had to do? I'm sure it is.
Yes. Well, all good stories start with once upon a time.
Yeah.
Let's look at it. I'm sure we've all experienced some trauma, either large or small, involving being abandoned, being neglected, breaking off relationships, and being heartbroken. And so the modus operandi is our whole human psychology is programmed for survival. Right? Everything that we do is based on the survival of this composite entity. Right? So once there is a threat to survival, we tend to either, we've got three options: fight, flight, or freeze. And part of the freeze process is before we can run away, right? Which is the natural instinct, because who wants to get hurt? Who wants to deliberately put themselves in a emotional, mental trauma, and knowing full well that you're going to get hurt? Unless you're a masochist, most of us wouldn't do that. So the modus operandi is that we want to pain. We don't want it in the first place, but we don't want to deal with it because it's so jolly uncomfortable. Right? Yeah. So what we do is we erect this wall around our heart to protect us from being hurt again. Now, this wall can be a white picket fence around your cottage, around your heart, or it can be the Great Wall of China, one of the original only human-built structures in the world that could be seen from space. That's how big and thick and jolly that was. So in the construction of this wall, it goes up rather quickly. It's almost an instantaneous manifestation of protection. Right? And there's a severe liability with this. Right? And the liability is you are now well protected by this wall around us, which protects us from being hurt from the external forces, but it also prevents us from giving out love. Yeah. So we might be protecting ourselves from a particular person because they've hurt us mentally, physically, or emotionally. And in doing so, as Brené Brown talks in her TED Talks, you cannot selectively numb one part without numbing everything. So we're trying to numb the pain of being hurt. We built this wall around us, so when it's directed at that person, they can't hurt us anymore. Right? We can hurt ourselves. We can build a mental structure around this whole thing. We go through all the emotions, all the low-level emotions, blame, shame, regret, anger, all of those we can build up, none of which are represented by love. Right? They're the lower emotions to protect ourselves. But the problem is this wall remains intact, and now we are in the space of somebody that does love us, that has never hurt us, and yet their love can't penetrate this impenetrable barrier that we've erected around our hearts. And then we can't give love because our own love cannot get through this huge barrier. Right?
Yeah.
So we're stuck in this place which we've created. We've frozen to build the wall, and we're now frozen with any movement in this relationship or with the relationships of other people, giving. Because I believe our highest purpose for being in this incarnation is simply to give and receive love. I think that's one of our highest purposes. Think about that. In everything that we do, if we can do it on a flow, an energetic flow of love, and be willing to accept that love, that compliment, that nice statement, that hug, and in turn give those back, how different would our lives be? I mean, I think that's why we came into this incarnation. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, the love that I feel for others is by far the best part of my life. It changed me every single time. I completely hear what you're saying there. And I was considering about my own wall. It's not the Great Wall of China. And my husband's. In the relationship that I've got with him, we have a really great opportunity to observe each other's patterns and call each other out on it. And because it's not our first relationship, we've broken down, some of our barriers, and we're able to see our own games quite well. Until possibly a third person comes in and says, "Hang on a sec, you two are really playing that daft game." But we've identified our walls, and my husband has a cave that he goes into. And it's like you just cannot find him in his cave. And I have this big iceberg that comes up around me, and it's really obvious when it happens, because I actually do feel like with this iceberg, it's huge and it does disconnect me. I freeze on people. It's really hard to get a normal response out of me. I just completely disconnect. And Carl, he's in this dark cave, and it's like his the light in him goes out. He's in the dark. He's cut off on his own. It's shocking how it occurs. I remember back in the day when I was doing my NLP training, a short while after that, doing some timeline therapy, which I have to just put a shout out to Tad James, the originator of it. He died recently. But what a wonderful technique timeline therapy is. And I went back to the first time I'd ever felt that I wasn't good enough. And I think that's possibly one of the times when I created my wall. But I had this really early memory of crying in a pram. So I was obviously a really small baby in the hallway, and I could hear the TV on in the other room. I could hear my parents or hear safety, but no, I knew that it was a certain distance from me. And I was crying and crying and crying, and I was being deliberately ignored. You know, that old don't spoil the baby, the crying it out technique. But I had a really visceral reaction to that, and it's kind of shocking. And when I think about that, it brings tears to my eyes that anyone would do that to a child, and yet it's really normal behaviour for modern day parents to ignore their children, like, you know, when they're in anguish. It's no wonder things like this actually occur, is it?
Yes. That's not an unusual reaction, and I use a hypothetical story. A child of a few months, say 18 months.
Yeah.
At that age, all we are building and developing is our emotional body, right?
Yes.
After 7 years or thereabouts, we start building our mental body. And after the next 7 years, of course, it's changing rapidly now, but we focus a lot on our physical body, going through puberty and sports and what we look like. But in those first 7 years of our formative stages, we are generally not able to enunciate fully what the problem is, especially with a wee babe, right?
Yeah.
They can't tell you, I'm dirty, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm hungry, right? They can't tell you that. And that's why women come downloaded with such beautiful intuition to deal with that. But, so this little child is in a pram in a lovely village in England, and she's got the Labrador with her. And down the high street, there's a butcher, and she needs to go into the butcher to pick up her package of meat for the week. But the dogs are not allowed in because it would probably eat all of that before they got out this door. So Mum locks the brakes on the little pusher, ties the dog to the post, and then goes into the shop and says, look, darling, you can see me. There's the window. Look, Mr. Butcher's waving to you. Look at his lovely white and blue striped apron. Hopefully that was behind. It didn't have that so threateningly. So she said, will you be all right? I'm just going to be a couple of minutes. And you sort of nod as you would as a baby. So Mum goes in there and looks back, waves to the child again, and the kid's very happy. But just at that time, a whole bunch of school kids are on the way to the museum, led by one teacher at the front and another at the back, and they're single filing down the footpath. And in that moment, the vision of Mum and the butcher's shop and the butcher is gone. And this seems like an eternity, because children of that age are in a state of oneness. There's no linear time. They're in this alpha state, and all of a sudden all these 30 kids go past, and it seems like years, and there's a feeling I've been abandoned. Oh no, where's Mum? I can't, what am I going to do? My survival is at threat. Mum comes out only to see the child in tears and with the package under her arm, says, what's the matter? I told you I was only going to be there for a few minutes. And that hasn't fully understood what's occurred. So it's childhood trauma could be something as simple as that, to as severe as I experienced in my 5 years, being sexually abused by a pedophile uncle. That was a big trauma. But a little trauma like this can have just an equal profound effect on our psyche. So now the child has developed an abandonment issue, feels neglected, can't stand crowds, who doesn't like going into the city or town or trains because there's so many people. It gets wrapped up in everything. And the ego mind cannot differentiate between then and now. This situation, when it happened, equals a busy train, somebody not calling when they should call, blah, blah, blah. A equals A equals A equals A. They can't differentiate the time frame in it. That was then. No, it's all happening now, right? It's all happening to me now.
There's
more.
Great.
There's more.
But can I just stop you there? I just want to say,
yeah, please.
That was a freaky story, actually, because my mum actually did once take me in the pram to the butcher's to get her shopping. We didn't have a Labrador, but she forgot that she had a baby, and she actually did all her shopping and walked home, unpacked her shopping, and then said, "Where's the baby?" And came back and found me in a pram. Thankfully, I don't consciously remember that one.
Well,
when I heard that,
yes.
I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it. Really, but I totally understand what it's like to be a mum and feel pressured and stuff, and to be in a daze. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You shared about your experience of having your trust well and truly broken. How did you, if you don't mind me probing, I mean, I don't want to push hard at all, but how did you find out about that? Did you remember it, or did it?
No, from 5 to 35, I dramatized the content of that event. And I had relationships. You go through a honeymoon period, and then that kicks in, and I would dramatize that. Now, I never physically hurt anybody, right? But I hurt them emotionally. I was not available. I wasn't honest and truthful about the relationship, how I felt, and committed to the relationship. It was tended to be a very one-sided relationship, and it was, dysfunctional, to say the least. Then after a series of relationships, and now I'm 35 years of age, having dramatized out this pattern of behavior, and of course projecting that stuff on the next partner, the next relationship, it finally dawned on me that, there's a pattern here, and it's my pattern. It's not them that's doing it, because I could comfortably justify that if it was somebody else. It's my pattern of behavior. And I got to a point where I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. So I found a very good teacher in Australia, and I did some regression therapy, and there it was, just taking me down the timeline, regressing me, and all of every innuendo. We're supposed to have 5 senses, 5 perceptions, and a 6th sense of intuition. This has something like 55 elements to it. That could be internal temperature, external temperature, the energetics of inside and outside, all sorts of things. And it's all there. It's all been recorded, right? And I saw this and experienced it and felt it through heavy, heavy grief, feeling the trust has gone, being physically abused, being told, I love you, don't tell anybody, this is our secret, right? As much as a 5-year-old boy could be stimulated, I was stimulated, and then the absolutely abhorrence of what was occurring. So all of that is mixed into this equation that was played out in the relationship. So I was secretive, right? I told people I loved them, but it wasn't genuine, and all of that. And I emotional pain giving, and just believing this is me, because I had buried this so deeply that I didn't have access to it. The regression therapy took me back to see it for what it is, and it transferred into the conscious mind. From that day forward, I never had a problem with it. Completely and utterly gone. No robotic behavioural patterns that I had to get rid of. It was gone just like that. And that really put me on the road to my coaching career, because it's what I really wanted to be able to do, to help people in that similar situation. So can we come back to the Great Wall of China?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I thought that did relate to the Great Wall of China.
Well, it did. It obviously did. I call it the Great Wall of China. I just buried mine. I buried it under comfort. I buried it under alcohol, motor racing, every distraction under the sun. It was buried.
So I had an iceberg. You had a kind of mountain on top of you.
Yes. Don't forget, we only see the tip of the iceberg. The bulk of it is not seen. So that's a beautiful analogy.
Oh, I'm frosty. Actually, in terms what you were just sharing there, if you don't mind, I realised about 4 or 5 years ago, I had not an awakening, but I had a moment of remembrance, and it shocked me about how I was punished as a child. Which on one hand was just a hand slap, but it was how it was administered and the language around it and how it was set up. And I realized that I'd coded in my love language and in my sort of partnerships that love and being punished were the same thing. And that really affected my sexual life in my relationships. And in particular in my last, one other big relationship, I wasn't able to feel very sexually satisfied unless I felt like I'd been a bad girl, or unless I was being sort of punished in some way or being deprived in some way. And it's a really messed up pattern to be in. And it took a lot to sort of unravel that. And that was just with, a particular way of being slapped and the words around it, and oh, I love you, and this hurts me more than it does you, and you just think, bullshit. I've got to call it. But actually it probably did, because people that do things like that are going through their own thing as well.
Yes. Yeah,
it's worms. And then I'm shocked, actually, being a coach, about the amount of people that I've come across who've had similar experiences to you, obviously. Similar and different, but I've been very shocked at the sort of betrayal of trust that goes on between, responsible adults and small children.
It's endemic, and family members.
Yeah, definitely. Most of the people I've spoken to, it has been family members.
Yes, yeah. So, this man was he was my father's brother as an uncle, and he was gay, and he married a lesbian woman, so they had a very convenient relationship, because in those days, you couldn't come out, so on the surface it looked like they were a loving couple, right? But and my parents knew he was gay, and there was no problem. He was invited to the farm. We went on holidays to Cornwall, and everybody trusted him. And he was the funny, jolly uncle that was a pedophile. Right? So it wasn't as if I could blame my parents, because my dad passed away when I was 26, but Mum lasted till she was 94. And wow. When I found this out, and she was very supportive of me on my spiritual journey, I said, Mum, I need to tell you something, and it's about Uncle Lou. Right? And I told her the whole story, and she was sobbing, uncontrollably. I said, Mum, it's all gone now. It's finished. I've forgiven him. I've let it go. I will see, and this was fresh after this regression therapy, I know I will see what I've gained from this. I can't see it now, right? I'm still processing it and integrating it. But don't feel that you have failed in any way to protect me, because you didn't know, right? And it was an innocent thing of uncle and child together. So, and she was cool on that, but she hadn't spoken to him for years. And when we moved to Australia, we sort of lost contact with the extended family and whatever. So anyway, coming back to the wall.
Yeah.
The liability is we cannot give and receive love. So the question is to ask ourselves, well, who built this wall? Well, I did. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I built it, I must know where every brick is, where it was placed, and how to unbuild it. So what I suggest to my clients is, don't look around for a big yellow caterpillar bulldozer and to knock it down. That would be optimum for some, but not for most people. What you want to do is make a commitment, have the willingness to change and do something about these circumstances, and then when you're ready, on your time frame, not anybody else's, when you're ready, go up to the wall, put your hand on the top brick and lift it up. And you might say, oh God, not today, I'll put it back again. Right? A few days later, say, no, I've committed, I need to do this. First brick, take it off, put it down. Take a breath and feel. You've just allowed a little bit of love to go out and a little bit of love to come back. Not very discerning amount, but just a fraction. But you're going to feel really good about, I'm now on the road to dismantling this wall. So then when you're ready, take the next brick and the next brick and let this pile up behind you. And then one day, just the local shire, the local government are doing some road repairs, and there's a big yellow caterpillar bulldozer there, and they left the keys in it. All right, they won't know, they've gone now. I'll just jump in this caterpillar and knock all the wall down. I'm done with it. I am done with it. It doesn't serve me. I'm receiving love, and it feels so familiar, so beautiful. And I'm giving it and seeing the effects of my love to other people. And the more I give, the more it keeps coming back. I love this. So that's the answer. Systematically dismantle it. And watch for any behavioral patterns that, in our two hemispheres of the brain, we have neural pathways that are habit forming and patterns.
Yeah.
Ideally we should practice this for 21 days. If we want to make a change, 21 days will generally change this old pattern of behavior, an old neural pathway, and it would be replaced with the new behavior. Right? So that would be my suggestion. Practice, dismantle the wall and start practicing just the new behaviors. I'm going to muster up my courage and I'm going to send this to this person. Tell me how much I appreciated the help. Open your arms, be hugged, give hugs. Right? Now there's an interesting metaphor here, is that humanity, the whole of humanity was shown how to do this. Right? And there was a huge divide between East and West Germany. There was a wall between there. And it separated families, and it separated communities, and it separated the nation. Right? The Berlin Wall we're referring to. And at one stage, later on in this saga, some individuals got up to the wall. They weren't shot at. They were allowed to do that, and they chipped away at this concrete to reveal the reinforcing bar, and they then cut the reinforcing bar and got a slab of wall and pushed it down, right? Allowing the free flow of energy and people. And then the government took over and just dismantled this whole wall. This is humanity's metaphor. This is the sign to say, break down these walls between communities, between families, between yourself and your higher self, your authentic self, and your three-dimensional self. We built a wall between that as well. So it was a beautiful metaphor, and of course it spelt the end of an era. After that we saw communism get dismantled in Russia, and we've seen lots of other activities that have reinforced that one act that changed the world. So if we can change the world, we sure can change ourselves, and it all starts with us.
Yes, and when you were talking about the Berlin Wall there, I realised at the moment we're constructing walls. We're in the process of constructing walls and taking them down. Like, it feels like part of humanity are putting walls up and taking it down. We're in a really polar time right now. If you think about how the media are communicating about a certain phenomenon that's going around the world, I don't even want to name it right now, but it's 2021. So many of you, whenever you listen to this, you'll know what I'm talking about. But the media is separating people according to whether they want to have a type of gene therapy that's been said to be a vaccine, and they're also like building a very strong polarity about people who've been ill, people who haven't, people who wear masks, people who haven't, people that voted one way or another, and there's some very strong beliefs patterns coming out, and also really strong censorship to separate people even further. So, we actually need to be very vigilant to break down the walls, whilst also knowing the walls are being constructed around us.
Yeah, so true. It's another form of wall. It's a psychological wall.
And it is based on that as well, isn't it? It's psychological. Yeah. The way we're experiencing it is hurt that other people would do this to us.
Yes.
How would they do that?
Yeah, well, there's another wall, and that's the wall that was being built in the States with Mexico. That's a physical wall, right? So the psychological wall is it's an age-old warfare tactic, which is called divide and conquer. If you can divide your enemy into two pockets or more, you're not facing a wall of enemy, you're facing two or more pockets of them, which are easier to overwhelm and to conquer. So that's been an old warfare strategy for a long time. Now, if you look at what's happening, let's take the States. We're looking at the States. Now there's a huge divide between Democrats and Republicans. The two parties, yes, the two parties are not working for the benefit of the nation. They're working at dismantling each other and dissing each other. And now their followers are dissing each other. So, and add to that the divide between black and white, gay and straight, all these different forms of duality. Duality is two sides of one coin, right? So, instead of just seeing one coin, we are human beings first. I don't care if you're gay, straight, whatever. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, whatever color. I don't care if you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Jain. It means nothing to me. What it does mean is we are all one human family. And if we're one family, why are we fighting each other?
Yeah.
But the narrative is designed to keep us separate right, which is the bane of humanity. The wall we put around our heart separates us from love, and it separates from giving and receiving. It separates us from our true identity, because the heart is the portal to the infinite. And now we've built a wall that we can't get to the infinite. We can't get to the higher self and all of those labels that we call them. So we need to be aware of separateness is what's happening to us. It's being played out. And what the discussion you're making is that you're either healthy or you're unhealthy. And both sides have a different view of what health is.
Yeah.
So we need to pull that wall down and see ourselves, look for what I call the triune. The triune is, let me use an example. We measure with temperature gauges, hot and cold, right? So I can say it's hot or it's cold or in between. But if I say temperature, right, it's neither hot nor cold unless I put a number on it.
Yeah.
So the triune of that measurement is temperature. It doesn't mean it's hot or cold, it's just the triune. The triune of duality, man, woman, day, night, hot, cold, good or bad, the triune of that is oneness. That we're all one family, that we're all in this together. So that's the way to break down our barriers. And the barrier around our heart is to see each one of us as being a reflection of each other.
That's lovely, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you.
And speaking of like triangular shapes, we're being joined by Pennyalpatella in Devon right now. So there's another aspect. Penny is also somebody who works in human development as a coach. So I'd be very interested, Penny, for your comments about the walls that go around people's hearts. What have you noticed about clients or humanity in general? Let us know. And also let us know, what is it like in the UK at the moment? Where are the walls right now between people? I really like the idea of the triune. I realised that I realised we've also got walls around our house. We've got walls around our perimeters of our gardens, and everything is kind of marked out as territory, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And so the original premise, sort of taking down the walls around our heart, from an as above, so below kind of context, inside and out. We also need to think about the barriers that we've got to stop communication in general. I've just moved somewhere where we are kind of tucked out of the way. In fact, for the last 4 years or so, we've been living in places where we've been tucked out of the way on a kind of need-to-know basis. Like, if you need to know where we are, you can find us. But otherwise, we're not that apparent, So we have got some boundaries in place. We're hidden. Maybe Carl's metaphorical cave and my iceberg. we may have thawed them around here, but we've put them out there. I don't know. I mean, you've got quite a nice tucked away place, haven't you, as well? But you do share yours with people that come to stay, don't you?
Yes, either to stay or to run retreats. And we're surrounded by beautiful nature.
Yes.
We came from nature, we're surrounded by it, and we'll return to it. So that was the motive behind being out here up in the mountains. And if you look at the behavior of indigenous people, let's take the Yanomami Indians of South America, of the Amazon. They don't have boundaries. Their whole area is shared. The Australian Aboriginal never had any land ownership because the land belonged to everybody. They were nomadic. They moved from place to place. They didn't even have settlements as such. So the idea of, let's use Australia as a good example. You buy a lump of dirt and the first thing you do is put a fence around it. You build your house, put a fence around it to keep the neighbours out and you in. right? Where indigenous folks, from their extraordinary wisdom, never had that. They could roam freely and believe that they were sharing this with other tribes and with nature. And it was all about being one with rather than one from. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, like you, I've lived in different cultures as well, and also like talking to people about stuff. And my kind of sister-in-law, when she was about 18, she went to live in Nepal, and they each had like their own huts. And she was really surprised, really taken aback as a young 18, and she was quite young as well, and very sort of innocent. She's a real natural innocence, but she was in her little hut, sort of arranging her stuff, and then a pile of not Balinese, Nepalese school children just walked into her hut, started picking up her belongings and looking at them, and that's just normal. And she was very shocked by that. Well, I guess what I'd like to kind of understand is, where is it okay to put up a boundary or have a sense of safety or security?
Nowhere on this planet that I know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We are surrounded by nature ourselves, actually. Nature is our barrier, actually.
In a way. On a personal basis, if we don't put up boundaries, we will attract disrespect.
Yeah.
So boundaries are not a bad thing, right? Because if we don't say to our kids, listen, that was a very unfair and unkind thing that you did to that child, you hurt them, right?
Yeah.
That is unacceptable behavior, right? And you need to stop that. I'm going to take you away here, and I'm going to explain to you why this behavior was not good, and how it could have harmed somebody, and what would be an alternative way. How else could you have dealt with this conflict? Because if you've done this, you've seen it, you've witnessed it somewhere, and it wasn't from us. Maybe you watched something on television or a game or, a Disney movie or something like that. But I just want to let you know, that's not an acceptable behavior. So now you've put boundaries in. So we need to do those boundaries. But, and the fact is that an enlightened community, an enlightened human species, or awakened or conscious, whatever label we want to put on that, would not need laws, because we would regulate ourselves, and we would be being conscious. We would make conscious, responsible choices that would have we would not have an impact on other people because of the consciousness. So we would consider, as I think you know that from my book, I try very hard to look at the impact of my decisions and behaviors today, 7 generations ahead. Right?
Yeah. And
so,
of course that book is Cause No Harm.
Yes, Cause No Harm.
We should put a little shout out to that book.
So a conscious community would self-regulate it. And those that transgressed the mores of that community or society would either be removed from the society, but not for punishment, for rehabilitation. And I'm not sure if I've expressed this before, there's a tribe in Africa, I'm not sure if I mentioned it on air before, but there's a tribe in Africa that if somebody transgresses the mores of that tribe, they bring them in, they've caused some harm, they put a circle of people around them, and everybody in the circle tells them how much they love that person, how much they admire them, what they've done, right? And in a very short period of time, this person, be it man or woman, breaks down and has felt the love. It's not punishment. And they become rehabilitated because of that. We've accentuated their value to the tribe. We've accentuated their goodness. And it's reconnected them to their heart, reconnected them to the community. So our society is all hell-bent on punishing people. we do need to remove them from society, but the very next action should be rehabilitation. Why are you behaving this way? And can you see how it's not healthy? It's not so good survival. All right?
Yeah.
And that's where coaches can come in and everything else like that.
I loved that example there, because what you're talking about there, some people talk about a circle of trust. In fact, one of my favorite films, I think it's called Meet the Fockers. The sort of a hard-faced CIA character has a circle of trust, and you're either in it or out. But actually,
Yes.
that African analogy is like a circle of love, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And as that love grows, it becomes impossible to maintain those barriers around your heart.
Exactly.
That wall around your heart, and it kind of melts away. And like you said, the person breaks down. And so maybe the act of breaking down is when that wall comes down.
Yes.
When we say it's a breakdown, it's kind of like our defenses have been broken down. Because I've got really small children, and I guess you see it with your daughters too. But when they get upset, sometimes what they need to do is actually have a cry. You can see their frustration building and building, and that frustration or that anger is like a wall. It's meant to keep me out. And
Yes.
sometimes the only thing I can do is just hold them, like really just hold them so they don't do themselves any harm.
Yeah.
And I reassure them that I love them until they just can't take it anymore. And all of a sudden you just feel the whole body just, it becomes
Yes.
like jelly, and they cry and they cry, and I just let them cry until it's gone. Now
Yes.
that's the kind of crying it out technique that I recommend, not
That's beautiful.
the baby
That's
crying
beautiful.
out. In fact, Penny's got something to add. She's just sent us something long, and I'm sure it's insightful. She said, the iceberg analogy I use a lot, along with regression, to release the stuff buried behind walls. Polarization has never been stronger in the UK. Wars between North and South, well, they were always there, but yeah, I'm sure. Neoliberalism and socialism, Brexit and Remainers, people who are not happy to be injected, labelled anti-vaxxer and evil. The question is, who is it dividing us? Why? I love the idea of communities taking the reins and working for and amongst themselves. Yes, thanks for that, Penny. Yes, that's a lot of wars going on right now. The key question was who is building it?
Yes.
Who is dividing us?
I've got another call at 3:00, so I'll give you a quick answer.
Sorry about
that's
that.
okay. No, that's no problem. Penny, it is a great question, and you're right, very observant of what's going on. There is a narrative that's spread out by the media. The media is bought and paid for by what are termed globalists, and they want to control everything, our food supply, our monetary supply, the governments, everything wants to be under their control. The new world order is one world government, a one world currency. If you do some homework on these, it'll lead you, but the best homework is to follow the money and determine who benefits from this. Who benefits from it? Yeah. There are some people that have made $20 billion in the last year and a half or so from this situation. Trace those down, and a part of your answer will lie within. So I hate to have to leave you in a bit of a limbo, but do some homework. There's some amazing sites there. John Kennedy is his son, John F. Kennedy's son, doing amazing work there. So maybe Louisa can just guide you to a few and make a start on it. And don't be labelled a conspiracy theorist. Be labelled a truth seeker, because that's the truth.
Yeah, that's
All right.
very well. That's fantastic, Rick. So you're going to have to love us and leave us now, are you?
Unfortunately, I have to put a wall between us and leave. No, that's just.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a really great topic. I love it as ever, and I look forward to chatting and catching up with you next week as well. So thank you to everybody that's joined us, wherever you've joined us from. Go on, Rick. Sorry.
Yeah, for your viewing guests and supporters. Thank you for taking the time to look in and watch this later on. Very much appreciated, and see what your takeaway is from this hour or so, and see how you might be able to apply it in your lives. So with that, I shall bid you adieu, as we used to say, a farewell.
Ciao, ciao, as we say here.
Ciao, ciao.
See you next week. Take care.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So Rick has left us, and what an amazing person. I love chatting with Rick because everything gets put into a different context. And he really is coming at us with such a beautiful and exquisite perspective. He really does care for humanity in a really huge way. Thank you for watching and joining us wherever you're joining us from. I know we've had quite a few viewers. If there's anything that you want to talk about at the end of this, then please do just send us a comment. You can pop it in the YouTube chat or Facebook chat, or better still, just reach out to Rick and I. You can reach Rick. It's info@rickpursell.com, and you can reach me. It's Louisa at feelgoodastrology.com. We're both coaches, both very happy to help and unravel some of the issues that might be coming up for you. In particular, some things may well have been triggered in some of the conversation today. So please do, reach out if you need to. In terms of the things that Rick was talking to you about at the end, in terms of research and the idea of anti-conspiracy and truth seeking and stuff, I always not only do I consider the money, I always I guess my route to examining things is watching different videos and talking to different people of all different viewpoints. We probably all do have that crazy friend on our Facebook feed that spouts off. And I remember quite a long time ago thinking, oh, that person's really gobby, what's going on there? And actually, that was my own wall between me and them, because I was afraid of actually that what they were saying might be true. So if you've got that kind of crazy friend, or if indeed I am that crazy friend, because I might be, then just drop them a line and say, I've noticed that you say these things, or you said these in the past. I'd like to have a conversation with you. I actually think it's really kind of core practice to check in with those people, because the chances are they've been in your position before. So I think, breaking down those walls are really helpful. And also consider some of your science friends, some of your sort of studied friends. Don't just consult one source. Put your feelers out. And then the last thing I think is I do your own research, but then also sit with it and really think about what feels right to you. There's a lot of things that I've come to realize just aren't real. A lot of the things that we've been told in our education systems, that this is how it is. And I've later learned through my own research that actually that's not true. Or the other thing is actually we don't know. And so the things that we're told are true, we can never actually be 100% sure of. So almost like train yourself in logical thought and thinking, and run it through a series of tests. I absolutely recommend thinking about that from that perspective. So if that's helpful, do that. And just remember these walls, like if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, this was about the walls that separate us. This is breaking down the walls around your heart. We all have them, and we all have those hurt moments. And when we think about the original purpose of those walls, it's to keep out the hurt, and also to keep out the love sometimes. Because the love might actually tumble the walls. It's an ego trick, the unconscious mind. Its only real task is to keep you alive, and sometimes it might keep you alive by disconnecting you from people because it feels safer to do so. So there's a lot of things at stake here. But one thing we can all be sure of, I think, from our own experience, is when we do release those walls a little bit, we usually have an influx of love. And if we go from the premise that we discussed earlier, that, you know, love is actually the best gift that any of us can have. Our loving relationships, the people we've connected with, are priceless. Then that's a really worthy goal. So dig deep, my friends. And if you've enjoyed this, please do join us again next week, or check out my other videos. Just go to Louisa Tanner Munson on YouTube, or you can check me out on Facebook in the Feel Good Conversations page. So anyway, lots and lots of love to you wherever you are in the world. Take care, love with all of your heart, and let's connect again soon. Bye for now.